Now some news from Alsace. Maybe you don't know, but well, generally in France, we've been hit by the COVID-19, but now we got over it, and all the tasting rooms are open again. We receive welcome tourists, a lot of tourists from Belgium, from Germany, and so on, and French, of course. And I just hope that it won't be too long until we can welcome guests from the US. Some other news from Alsace about the vintage. We expect a nice vintage this year. 2012 will be a nice vintage. The spring was very warm, very sunny, and in terms of volume and quality, I just hope it will be nice. But please come back to us in September or October. We will have more information for you. Let's start, but I would love to see the wine routes and the location. I don't know if it works. I don't know which slide you have, because I still have Alsace Rocks, but never mind. Yes, go on again, please.
I know it's slow.
Yeah, it's a little bit slow. No, between Los Angeles and Alsace, my God, nice and amazing distance. Yes, perfect, perfect. Keep this slide. So you see, we are located in the most northeastern part from France, just near Germany and Switzerland, if you want to see. Well, the location is very important to explain the quality of our wines. Climates, soils, and so on. It's a very narrow region, by the way, 1 to 10 miles wide to 75 kilometers long. About next, the history. History is very important in Alsace. It's an eventful history, and you know, living in Alsace is not like sailing on a quiet river. History is very important for us, and for the wine business, we can analyze 3 different periods. Very important. The first one, normally you should be able to see it. Yes, thank you, Stephanie. The first one goes from 900 until 16,000, 1,600, excuse me. And this is what we call the Golden Age. Amazing periods. The Alsace wines were the most famous in France and in Europe, the most expensive also. We sent all of them in Europe, and they were more popular than the Bordeaux wines. Can you imagine that? And that's why also Alsace became a very rich region, and we were able to build all the famous villages like Gewurztraminer, Ribeauvillé, Kinsheim, and so on and so on. The second period is a bit, it's not so very funny, because it goes from 1,600 until the end of the First World War. Different crises. We just forgot the quality instead of the main objective was the quantity. And unfortunately, in 1871, we became German because we were completely annexed by Germans. The last period started after the First World War, and that's what we call the renewal of Alsace. And in fact, you must know that Alsace is an old region, you understood that, but in the meantime, it's quite a new region because all the appellations been created, I would say, have been created after the Second World War, in 62 for the Haute Alsace, in 75 for the Grand Cru, 76 for the Crémant d'Alsace. So amazing region with a rich culture. On the next slide, you know, Alsace is an amazing region because you can't confuse Alsace with another region in France. We have a special dialects, a very rich culture, and during centuries, Alsace was a land of passage. So we've been influenced by a lot of different culture. I mean, Dutch, the Danish, Swedish, the Germans, the Swiss, and so on and so on. By the way, my family comes from Switzerland. My ancestors came from Basel in 1655, exactly. We have also a very rich architecture, excuse me for my pronunciation. As you can see, we have the Cathedral of Strasbourg. That was the highest building of the world until 1847. And you must be surprised to see the Liberty statue, but you must know that the creator, the guy who created this statue, was born in Colmar, the capital of the Alsace Rocks. A strong identity also. We have our own dialect. We still speak it. My parents and with my generation, we can speak dialect very easily. We're together. We love to work. We're famous to work hard, and we love to eat also. We have an amazing gastronomy. And Alsace is the region with one of the highest concentration of Michelin stars restaurants. So please come, and you will be absolutely surprised by this this region. Let's go deeper. Let's go deeper with the Alsace wines. This slide is very important. This picture, this image is photo is very important because you know, we have a Alsace, we have a rolling landscape, amazing villages, small parcels. You know, Alsace, just like our wines, is like a kaleidoscope, in fact. We have different facets, different aspects, and so that's why this region is, once again, absolutely rich. Some other photo of the winter time, which is very important for us, and the next one, yes, that's very typical of, we see this village with the snow. It's very quiet, but it's a warm period and an amazing period in Alsace, the winter time. The next one, some figures. I'm not a fan of figures. I will not borrow you with so many figures, but you see we have the surface, the percentage of each grape varieties, and the most planted is the Pinot Blanc, because we use it a lot for the Crémant d'Alsace, and all these figures are from the vintage 2019. And the second grape variety, which is the most planted, is the Riesling with 20%. It represents about, I can't remember the acres, but quite a lot, and that's our favorite grape variety in Alsace. The different appellations, of course, you see that the main production is for the Haute Alsace, Grand Cru, and Crémant d'Alsace also. What is important to say is that we have a small range in terms of volume, but great in terms of image and potential, of course. Average production, 1 million hectoliters, that represents a bit more than 10 million cases per year. Bordeaux, nearly 60 million cases. So once again, quite small, 38,000 acres along 75 miles. So once again, quite narrow, quite long, with 90% of white wines and 10% of red. And that's, I have to explain you that. We produce we produce mainly white wines in Alsace, thanks to the climate, to the soil, but also to the gastronomy. You must know that in Alsace, we produce wine to be drunk with food. We love to eat. And our gastronomy is historically based on smoked meat, salted meat, cabbage for the choucroute, potatoes, fishes from all the rivers we have in Alsace, and of course, the pork, our national vegetables. And that's why we develop mainly a production of white wines, no malolactic fermentation most of the time. So these type of white wines are absolutely perfect for this kind of foods. But trust me, I don't eat choucroute every day. I don't eat flammacure and pecao, our traditional dishes every day. But our wines, you can pair our wines with so many different gastronomies. And 10% of Pinot Noir, that's a grape variety which is booming, and we will have an amazing example later. I just want to, yeah, thanks for coming back on this slide. I just want to say that we have 761 brands, and a bit more than hundreds of them export to the US. US is a very important market for us. It's on the 3rd position for the export market. So please continue to buy our wines, and thanks for that once again. 53 different appellations and 2 additional labels, VTSGN, that means late harvest and selection of number rots. That's all for the figures. Let's go to the varieties. We are famous to produce grape variety wines in Alsace from 7 different grapes. That will have a little bit more, but on this slide, you have the 7 main grape varieties. And all our wines are bottled in Alsace by law since 1972, just because we wanted to control the quality. You have only 2 regions in France which are able to do that, which are allowed to do that, Champagne and Alsace. And we bottle in all our wines in this special bottle, the Flûte d'Alsace, the Flûte du Rhin. Why this shape? We have to use it by law, by the way, since 1959. We can't use another bottle. It contributes to our identity also. Why this shape of the bottle? I don't have the real answer. Sorry for that. Maybe I have different explanation. Maybe you know, in all the Alsace wines, you will have this freshness, backbone freshness. So that all the wines are quite upright, like the bottles, and also the shape of the bottle reminds you the Rhone, not Rhone Valley, the Rhine, excuse me, Valley. Thank you so much. Alsace is a very small region, and on the next slide, you will see that we're able to produce an amazing range of white wines. We want to be, and we are, the reference of the white wines. What I want to say is that in a very small region, very small area, a little bit less than 40,000 acres, you will find in Alsace all the white wine you might expect, from the dry Sylvaner and Muscat, crispy, light, from the well-balanced Pinot Blanc and of course Pinot Gris, the very exuberant Gewurztraminer with a very discreet acidity, and the king of the white wine, the Riesling, which has both freshness, of course, and also richness. By richness, I mean structure, alcohol, glycerol, and so on. But you know, one dimension is missing on this slide. I can't work on 3D with PowerPoint. Just imagine that the axis of with the aromas comes to you. And in this case, the Muscat and the Gewurztraminer will be in the front because they are the most concentrated in terms of primary aromas. And in all the wines you will taste in Alsace, you will taste the primary aromas which exist in the grapes, the origin, and also the terroir, but we will talk about that later. Give me the name, just one thing, give me the name of an area, not a region, not a country, which is able to offer you this range of white wines. I don't know it, honestly, because it's so large. It's, as I said before, a kaleidoscope of white wines. Next, I would like to introduce you one of the first pillars of the Alsace wines. We have different pillars, but this is very important, the family. People are the heart of the Alsace wines and Alsace in general. And more than people, I would say the family are the soul, as it's written, the family are the soul of Alsace. And never mind if we talk about wine growers, wine merchants, or a cup, behind each label, you will find a family with generation, with experience. And it's quite common to see on the same, in the same company, sometimes 2-3 different generations working together. And the aim of the grandfather or the father is to transmit and to give all the to share all the experience to the new generation, the daughters and the son. That's very important. And you have a lot of examples, and we'll have a very good example later with some different wines. In Alsace also we developed a genuine hospitality. You know, in Alsace you can drive on the Rhine route, which is one of the oldest from France. And what is important and interesting is that you can knock at all the door and you will be welcome everywhere to taste wine, to talk with the wine producers, and that we love to receive people, definitely. We have a strong sense of hospitality. And of course, you're welcome. And I hope to see you soon in Alsace. I know that some of you came already in Alsace. Please come back and to appreciate my region. Another pillar will be the next. No, in the next one. Yes, it comes slowly. Yeah, that's it. The terroir. Unfortunately, I don't have long time to explain you the terroir because I could spend hours with producers to talk about the terroir. This is another pillar of the Alsace wines. Typical French name, difficult to explain, translate. Hi Christian, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Hi Thierry.
We are just in the middle of your vineyards in Egisheim. Can you explain us where we are on the terroir, foothills, mountains, and so on and so on?
Sure.
1 minute.
1 minute. I know. I
Okay.
will be as quick as possible. So
Thanks.
I am very pleased to talk about the terroir, and we've got here a beautiful, great view over the plain of Alsace, over the vineyard, and in my back the Vosges Mountains. And you see at the foothills of the Vosges Mountains this vineyard surrounding us, the town of Egisheim, and a bit further in the Crémant direction, the plain area. So you can easily imagine that this great country does have a huge diversity of soil. It's actually, Alsace is one of the most complex regions talking about geology in France, and it's a wonderful playground for us winemaker, but also for you consumer, you guys, because Alsace is showing at least 13 different kind of soils, and you go from limestone to sandstone, granite, slate, many other, and each time we want to find the connection, the right place, the right grapes on the right side of the hill to plant and to have the best connection between both.
I have one other question, one more question for you. What about the benefit for the consumers?
It's great because you can make very interesting tasting. For example, having a Riesling on sandstone, on limestone, or on granite, you will have 3 different kind of Alsace expression and 3 great Rieslings. Perfect. Thank you so much. Great, thank you. Okay, let's go to the climate. We have an amazing climate in Alsace, and that's part of the terroir, of course. Colmar is one of the driest towns from France, by the way. We have around between 500 and 650 millimeters of rainfalls per year. The spring are pleasant. Summer might be very warm. During the winter time, it's very cold, some frost sometimes, and snow also. And in September, October, we have hot days and cool nights. And that's why, just due to this difference of temperature during the days, between the days and the nights, it's possible to preserve freshness and fruitiness. And that's why also we have a very slow ripening. And that's why also all our grapes are fully adapted to the terroir of Alsace. On the next slide, you will see that we have a very facing south and southeast exposure. Once again, all the vineyards receive the sun from the morning, very slow ripening, and that's part of the quality of the Alsace wines. On the terroir, you have also soils. And on the next slide, you can see different influences on soils. How can I say?
Say it in French, if you
want.
No.
I will say it in English. I will try to do my best. Each soil will have a special effect on the wine. It's a link to the terroir. Example, on alluvial, that means in the plain, on gravels, rocks, you will have, when you produce some wines over there, you will have a pure varietal wine. On granites, the wine will be very aromatic with thin acidity. Very good example in a few moments. On limestone soil, an amazing acidity, backbone acidity. On marl and clay, the wines will be very full-bodied, rich. And this is what we call the link to the terroir. Try to taste the wine just by knowing the soil. You will feel also this minerality, different minerality, which will be different from one soil to another soil. The last pillar, the next pillar, the last one I would like to give to you is organic and biodynamic. And you must know that we were the pioneer in France. We started 60 years ago in Alsace, and it's not a marketing objective, by the way. 19% of vineyards are certified on organic and biodynamic, and it's booming. And if you consider all the vineyards which are not certified in this type of production, we have 35% of the vineyard in Alsace. That's amazing, once again. But you know, it's not once again, it's not a marketing objective. We just think that prevention is better than to cure the vineyards. And that's why we developed this. Just a respect of the vineyards, the earth, the people who work in the vineyards, and also the guests, the people who will enjoy our wines. Just to biodynamic, just to boost all the performances of the vineyards.
Hi, Antoine, how are you?
Hi Thierry, fine, and you?
Yeah, not bad. I have a real challenge for you. I just give you 1 minute, no more, 1 minute to explain us what means biodynamic for you in Alsace, and especially in your company.
Okay, challenge accepted. So biodynamics, basically, it's a way of farming, considering even the farm. It's a living organism. For me, it's the next step after organic. It's using the cosmic rhythm, all the planets, what they influence on the Earth, using the different preparation proposed by Maria Thun and Rudolf Steiner. It's to reinforce the bond between the sky and the Earth. It's to respect the client, the guy working for us. And the next step is just learning more to feed our body, our soul, and our spirit.
I love that. Thank you so much.
I wanted to show you this slide also, and we will taste different wines. We have an amazing diversity of wines in Alsace, and wines for the regular consumers. If you want to discover our wines with grape variety wines, Sylvaner, Riesling, it's very easy to discover them. But in the meantime, we'll have also some terroir wines. And now, as we're just thirsty and very curious, and I know that Jenny is waiting to talk about the wines, take the speech, please. Come on, Jenny.
Fantastic, I'm here.
Yeah, I know that you're here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Alsace is truly, it's a magical place, and the wines and the people that are there are truly special. So it's an honor to be here. Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk a little bit about Crémant d'Alsace today and a Gewurztraminer in a little bit, but just wanted to go into just some key facts in the same way that Thierry is not totally into figures. I'm not either, but there are some that are very important that I'd like to mention. So Crémant d'Alsace received its AOC status in '76 and represents over 25% of Alsace wine production, which is really important. Another really important item to consider is the growth in this area of Crémant d'Alsace. I know just as a wine professional on the floor, it's been a lot more present on restaurant wine lists and also in retail shops, which has been really, really great as it provides an excellent value from a sparkling perspective. It was less than 1 million bottles production going into the 1980s, and then now is at 32.8 million bottles. So that sort of growth is indicative of its importance on the world stage, which is very important. But it's now the top take-home AOC sparkling after champagne in all of France. So it's an important topic. It's always made in the traditional method. So second fermentation takes place in the bottle. It can't be sold prior to 12 months of cellar aging, including 9 months on the lees. So that's also very important. And can be made from several different varieties. So varieties that of course are indicative of the Alsace region. So we're talking about Chardonnay, which I saw there was a question earlier asking about Chardonnay. Chardonnay can only be used in the AOC Crémant d'Alsace. There aren't single bottlings there. Pinot Blanc is important. Auxerrois provides some roundness and depth. You have Pinot Gris, which gives it a little bit more rich and round notes. The Chardonnay, of course, offering a little bit of lightness and elegance, and Pinot Noir as well. So Pinot Noir is the only variety allowed for Crémant d'Alsace Rosé, which we will be talking about one of those in just a little bit.
And Riesling.
And Riesling, sorry. Yes, which adds a really nice lively fruit character. It's a very important one. And also some structure. Riesling is king. So there are different permitted styles. I'm going to talk about an extra brut and a brut rosé today. But there's also, one is a Blanc de Blanc as well. There's Blanc de Noir. Really important kind of, the brut is what we often will see here, but there are also some very important other bottlings, which are very visible, and you can find them in your local shops as well. I guess we can talk about pairings after I talk about the wine, since these wines tend to be very versatile. And so I enjoy.
No, I'm about to go.
I enjoy tasting them with food or without food.
Hey, just
But let's start here with Melanie Pfister. So both of the wineries that I want to talk about today are important to me personally, as well as from an amazing quality standpoint. Both Melanie and Laura Adam, who represents Jean-Baptiste Adam, which we'll taste next, were both at one of our Women in Wine dinners that we host at Sepia and PROXI, which was really important. So I've gotten to meet them. And when Thierry talks about family being at the heart of Alsace, it's such a relatable thing that I often will go back to when I'm teaching about Alsace, because it's history, it's passion, it's all of the, it's generations of care that come into the final product that you are enjoying at your table, which there's just so much history. It's a really intriguing and really beautiful region. But going back to Melanie, she's 8th generation. The particular bottling that I'm tasting today is called Bright. I don't know if you've seen her labels in the past. They were different. They were kind of this like much more colorful. This is a little bit more simple. This is a new labeling for her, which was something new for me. And she's now, instead of labeling Crémant d'Alsace Blanc de Blanc, it's called Bright. So it represents the vineyard where the wine is coming from. So it's called Hangin' Bright is where this particular bottling is from. And it is a Blanc de Blanc, 50% Chardonnay and 50% Pinot Blanc. And it spends 36 months on the lees. So it's a serious wine. It's structured. It's really, really beautiful in its ripeness, but it's also done in a very dry style. So this is an example of an extra brut style from the region. And generally I would talk about enjoying Crémant without, the brut or the extra brut without food. This is also one that has some serious structure to it. Like you can definitely enjoy this with roasted chicken. I am always talking about fried food and bubbles in general, but French fries, things like that. Snacks like, I don't know, popcorn, anything like that. This would be really great. Also sushi and sashimi. Just a really, really beautiful, very kind of exciting style of Crémant that I haven't really seen as much until recently. So this is a vintage 2015, which I forgot to mention, which was a lower volume vintage, but just a very clean and elegant style. So that's my extra brut for today. And going into Crémant d'Alsace Brut Rosé, this is a wine that I've worked with for as long as I've been in Chicago, for the last almost 3 years, which has been fantastic, and gotten to know Laure and their wines very well. She is actually going to be, I think she's 15th generation. So she's also talking about the heart of Alsace being family. So she's 15th generation. They practice biodynamic agriculture wholeheartedly. So we were also talking about, Thierry was talking about how important the environment is. And I often have to mention, just because it's such a big part, also Melanie Pfister is working with organics as well. I didn't mention that. But it's just really, when you're in the environment there, when you're in Alsace, it's really beautiful to see how the vines are thriving. The fruit is beautiful. There's vibrancy in the vineyard. There's a lot of life in this region, not only from the history and culture, but from standing in the vineyards and just looking at the vines. There's this electricity. There are wild strawberries. There are bees everywhere. It's like, it feels like a place where you want to consume what is being produced there. It's lively. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. And it really shines through in these wines, and I just get excited about it. So they just celebrated, the Adam family celebrated 400 years of winemaking recently in 2014. And they have, this particular bottling is 100% Pinot Noir, of course, but this is a wine that I have recommended over and over to guests working on the restaurant floor, where maybe they had not heard of Crémant d'Alsace. And this is one that they will come back and ask for often, which I think is a really fun testament to the quality and the value of the wines. But it also kind of gets them interested in what else is being produced from this region. So it's a little bit of a gateway wine into the rest of the wines that are produced there as well. So that's also very important. Anything else I should mention, Thierry?
No.
I mean, I can keep going.
Yeah, no, I know. I can't imagine.
But I think overall at the heart is that these wines they're important in that they are something that can introduce guests. If you're working, you know, in restaurants or working in retail, something that can introduce guests to the region. They're an excellent value. They over deliver, which is awesome. And they also have this history attached that if you have those guests or people that like to sell wine like I do, that really appreciates a good story, I feel like it checks all those boxes. So it's a really fun style of wine to introduce people to in general.
Well, the problem, Jenny, is that you just gave my conclusion.
Sorry, I didn't know that.
No, come on, Jenny, come on. Okay, Josh, how are you?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Shall we try the last video?
Oh, yes, please. Let's give it a shot.
I have one question for you, and only 1 minute. Sorry for that. I just want to have can you give us your idea about the Riesling? What do you think about Riesling of Alsace?
Riesling to us, my family and I, is the king of the white grapes in the world. It is the most amazing white grape for several reasons. Of course, terroir, which is in Alsace very important, and it's a very transparent grape to show you how is made the soil. Of course, when it comes to food pairings, it's also amazing. In Alsace, we produce 10% of the Riesling in the world in a dry style, and dry Riesling goes with almost everything when it comes to food. And of course, longevity of the wines, usually when they come from a great terroir, they can last for sometimes decades.
Decades.
Oh, wow. And yes, finesse, purity, all about that in these wines, minerality, it's just my favorite.
Okay, the last question, your best vintage in Alsace?
Difficult to say, many. Very much like, yes, a lot, but recently I have some feelings for the 2014.
14,
Yes.
okay. Is it the wine we have in our glass?
Yes.
That's wine. Perfect. Thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you.
Cheers. I know that you're a great fan of Riesling.
Yeah, I sure am.
And what about this slide?
This, what do you say, this climate?
What about this slide?
Oh, okay. So there is all of the kind of geological complexity which you can find in Alsace is represented on this slide. And I remember, I won't go too deep into the nitty gritty, haha, good pun. But the way I like to explain to people, I take a few million years of geology and I condense it into telling people it's kind of like making a chocolate souffle that fell down. So if you could imagine if you're trying to make a chocolate souffle and slowly the souffle rises and rises and rises and you get all those layers of cream and eggs and chocolate kind of coming together in this souffle, and it's rising and rising and rising in your oven. And that's how Alsace, the geology of Alsace, started to form gazillions and gazillions of years ago. So slowly it rose and slowly it rose and slowly it rose. And what happens when you get impatient with your souffle, or somebody comes to visit and they slam the door, or you open your oven? Well, wham, your souffle falls. So this is what happens with Alsace. And you have Germany and the Black Forest on one side, and you have the Vosges on the other side, and in the middle, you have a lower flat river valley. And all of those layers of cream and chocolate and eggs and sugar and all of those delicious things that were baking into your souffle as the geology was being pushed up over the years, all of a sudden are now exposed in all sorts of different types of places without rhyme or reason or very well organized. And actually, the last wine we'll discuss today actually has a fault line running straight through the vineyard. So even in the process of determining small little vineyards, there are specifically different soil types in Alsace. So if anybody's into, terroir and geology, there is simply no greater place than Alsace in order to discover the impact that these soils have. And I would also add, let's say you love terroir, and you think Burgundy is really great, Burgundy is delicious, but you really only have a couple of different grapes through which the soil can express itself. In Alsace, you have nearly a dozen, and you have nearly a half dozen that are truly noble. So you can go into a vineyard, like for example, today, we'll discuss a vineyard, Schlossberg, which is an extraordinary vineyard. And we'll also discuss a wine made from another Grand Cru called Geisberg. And they have completely different soil types, and the wines taste and age act completely differently on your palate and with food. And it's really, really those, so you can always find an example of, what kind of impact more fertile soil has, deeper soil, lighter soil, soil that drains more quickly, that maybe holds a little bit of water. And that's a little bit about the way I like to give a short version of what you could spend a lifetime on in describing the geology and the terroir of Alsace. So we have the 13 kind of identified geological formations where you have some volcanic soil, which really appear actually down in the south in a very famous, in Rangen down in the south, some very famous vineyards there. You have granite, which is a little bit more of a fertile, warm soil. And then you have different versions of limestone and sandstone, which give a little bit of a leaner, more austere, more powerful style of wine, especially in its youth. And then you have some the groups of alluvial soils, which you found down on the plains, where you're going to find, a lot of different varietals, and also a lot of grapes that are used in Crémant and Appellation d'Origine Protégé wines, which I'm going to talk about right now, if I can kind of dovetail directly into wine number one. So, and the one or two other things I want to say just about Riesling really quickly before we get into our first wine, the 2018 Barmes-Boucher Riesling, is one, Alsace is sunnier and drier than the lion's share of the German versions of Riesling, to which they're often compared, and which causes a little bit of confusion in consumers' minds and things like that. And because it is warmer and drier, and because of its northern location, Riesling, which is a late harvesting varietal and a late budding varietal, really has an opportunity to display riper flavors and a little more of that kind of special mystery mineral note that a lot of people like to discuss in Riesling. As of 2008, the laws in Alsace changed so that appellation level Alsatian wine, particularly Riesling, which is very confusing to people, must be fairly perceptibly bone dry. And by that, we mean it is legally required to be drier than the most popular wines produced in the United States, which are made, the most successful brands in the last decade inside the United States are 2 to 3 times as sweet as the legal definition of Alsatian wine. So you can really, the Alsatian appellation level wine. So you can really bring these wines to consumers and reach for them on a shelf and be confident they're going to be much leaner and drier than people might be expecting them to be. The value is extraordinary. The highest level of Italian wine, for example, their DOCG wines permit at times 25 to 30% higher yields. And at the Grand Cru level, Alsace only permits half the yields that you'll find in the most prestigious Italian denominazione like Fiano Diavolino DOCG and Soave Classico Superiore and Verdicchio and things like this that are really extraordinary wines, but the yields are at most 30% lower and at times less than half. So you're getting extraordinary value and quality even before you open the bottle. And of course, Alsace has this amazing ability to deliver all sorts of different styles of Riesling. All right, so here we go. 2018 Barmes-Boucher. I like Barmes-Boucher very much because it's really an example of the forward thinking that's going on in Alsace right now. You have a commitment towards biodynamics. I've been drinking Barmes-Boucher for about 10 or 15 years myself, and I've really noticed the wines become drier and with more tension and leaner over the years. And this is a young domain that's only been around for about 40 years. So it's really an indication of what's happening with people who are kind of looking forward and listening to consumers and doing things organically and biodynamically and looking to kind of the next generation. Now, this wine comes from those valley plains, that kind of valley floor we were talking about. It comes from the Herrenweg vineyard. And this is kind of an alluvial, pebbly soil. It's very well drained, which can be a kind of a problem maybe in hot, dry years. But 2018, it's important to point out, was a very successful vintage in Alsace. You did not have a lot of the kind of tricks of Mother Nature. You didn't have massive frost. You didn't have massive hail. You didn't have crazy heat spikes and things like this. It was a beautiful, warm, temperate vintage. This particular area gets a lot of sunshine. It's an old area. It's an area that's been kind of like cleared and populated and understood for a very long time, back since Roman times. So here you have an estate making a dry style of Riesling from a warm site in a very kind of temperate, disease-free, stress-free vintage. So it's a really perfect example of bringing the dry, ripe, sun-driven style of Riesling of Alsace to people, and you can really change. It is bone dry. This is lean and mouth-watering, and really change people's opinion about what they might be confused about Riesling coming off a little bit off dry and things like that. Now, one of the other things I wanted to mention about this wine, they make about 1,000 cases. So their entry-level wine, which costs $22, is made in 1,000 case quantity with biodynamic viticulture, and it's $20. I don't know how many people can get such a small production, hand-harvested, caretaken wine for $20, which goes really, really well with absolutely everything. Now we're going to go into Grand Cru. And Grand Cru is a horse of a different color. Grand Cru, now you're up in those hills. You're not down here on the plains anymore. You're up in those hills. And one of the most famous Grand Cru is Schlossberg. Schlossberg was the first one to take advantage of the Grand Cru status. It's in a very famous village called Kaisersberg. And the soil in Schlossberg is granitic. And what that soil does to Riesling and all of the grapes is it's a little bit more fertile. It's a little bit less austere. And Schlossberg is a Grand Cru that you can rely on to bring you wines which are very approachable, very delicious, a little bit softer, and wines that you don't have to put downstairs in the cellar for 5 or 10 years to really see what they're all about. Now, with this particular wine, there's actually a little bit of perceptible residual sugar in the wine, but the acidities are so prominent and the pH is so low that here is where you start to see that beautiful dance between a little bit of residual sugar and that acidity. And listen, the world drinks a lot of margaritas. We drink a lot of whiskey sours. People like acid and sugar put together. That's what happens. There's no shame in it. And again, I will tell you, the 8 grams of residual sugar in this wine is lower than a lot of those very famous, very successful brands in the United States. So when people tell you they don't love wine with a little bit of residual sugar, it's the balance that we can bring to the table here. 2017, big problems with frost, very, very low yields. But the vineyards and the hills were able to kind of circumvent that a little bit. Let me see if I can get that in here. This is the Albert Mann Schlossberg. This is another estate that's dedicated to organics and biodynamics. They've got about 50 acres under vine. And it's just really an extraordinary opportunity to stand in the vineyards with these gentlemen and listen to them talk about viticulture and wine. And, they'll dig a hole in the ground and show you what soil is where and things like this. It's an extraordinary estate. And frankly, they make a tremendous amount of wines, again, at every level that are extraordinary values. So that's what I have to say about Schlossberg and 2017, which was, again, it was a very frost-reduced vintage, but the wines that they came in, because there was heat as well, there's a little bit of extra residual sugar in some of the wines, but they're balanced out very, very well. Now, going into 2013, I think it's 13 or 12, I'm not sure, the Trimbach Geisberg. 12. Okay. Yeah. So Geisberg Grand Cru. This is a very special wine and a unique wine for a couple different reasons. One, Geisberg is kind of the opposite of what Schlossberg has to offer. Schlossberg, again, has that kind of accessibility. Geisberg is limestone. It is lean. It is austere. It's got a little bit of sandstone in there also. It's literally a vineyard that's chopped into 2 different geological pieces. And you have a winery, an estate, which makes a lean, a style full of tension and full of minerality and things like this. Another thing I'd like to say about this particular wine is that Trimbach is an estate that really is one of those that said, we're not that impressed with the Grand Cru system. We're going to continue to make our Clos Saint Hoon, even though we could call it Rosac or Grand Cru. We're going to continue to make our Frederick Emil, even though we could call it Geisberg or Osterberg Grand Cru. However, about 10 years ago, there were new rules put in place which allowed the Grand Cru to really turn even more towards quality, lower their yields, and govern themselves in a way which said to even somebody like Trimbach, which said, you know what, we'd rather not, we are now going to engage the Grand Cru system, and we're going to label these wines in true Trimbach style. They age it in the cellar for 5, 6, 7 years before they release it because they love doing that. It's another way, it's a fantastic value. And it's a cool vineyard story. It belonged to the convent of Ribeauvillé for a very, very long time. And they were able, because their relationship goes back 1,000,000 years in Alsace, they were able to work with the vineyard for a very, very long time. And it's just a real great example of the power and the balance that comes with the limestone soils, which is kind of the opposite of the soils that are a little bit more generous. So that's why we're showing that one today.
Thank you so much. I just have a question for you, Josh. Now it's 8 p.m. in Alsace, and I'm starving. So for each wine, one dish. For each Riesling, could you give us one dish?
Sure. I mean, I think for the Barmes Boucher Riesling, that can, I mean, you can really have that with anything. It's a lean, dry Riesling style, but I like to have that, that's one of those wines where if I'm having a little bit of kind of like pate or maybe I'm having some, if I'm cooking and I want a little snack while I'm hungry, that's the kind of wine that I think is dry and lean and kind of gets my mouth watering. And so that I'll open while I'm cooking and while I'm kind of snacking. And so maybe pate and croûte or tarte flambée or something like this. Now, next.
Schlossberg.
Schlossberg, I have to tell you, this is how good and this is how amazing food pairing is in Alsace. On American wines, you say pair with red meat, pair with seafood. On the tasting sheet from the Alvermont estate, Atlantic cod, raw milk reduction, and lemon emulsion, carpaccio of scallops marinated in olive oil, or risotto with shrimp.
Stop. I'm starving.
and then for the Geisberg, I like squab or birds or things like this, or getting into big foods, things like this.
Okay, thank you so much, Josh. Yeah. Matthew.
Yo.
How are you?
Hey guys. Hey, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. I'm doing well. Being from a region where Burgundian varieties are coveted, I'm from Santa Barbara, just north of Los Angeles, where I live. I was given the opportunity to talk about Pinot varieties, Le Pinot. Yeah. In this case, when you say Pinot, a lot of times people assume, without the second part of that word, that it's going to be a red wine. People assume Pinot Noir. And what's fun about that is in this case, we get to really dive into the different mutations of Pinot Noir. And in some cases, things that maybe you aren't thinking about at all with respect to maybe some dirty little secrets of Alsace, some fun little pairing things that are breaking the code of wine pairings. It's really a fun thing. And I get to start off with a wine that a few of you asked questions about, specifically Pinot Blanc, so the variety itself is the most planted variety because it's used a lot in Crémant, Alsace, 23% of the vineyards in all of Alsace. Now, to be labeled varietal Pinot Blanc, the wine does not have to be only Pinot Blanc in the bottle. There's this dirty little secret we talk about, or that's referenced sometimes. It's usually under the rug, don't say it too loudly. And there's also not exactly a law about but they can blend into a wine that's labeled as Pinot Blanc as much as they'd like Auxerrois. And in some cases, you could choose to do 100%. They don't tend to do that. You have the opportunity to put varietal Auxerrois on the label if it is 100%. But in the case of this wine, the Domenzin Umbric 2016, this is a wine that's 2/3 Auxerrois and 1/3 Pinot Blanc. So a very high amount of Auxerrois, still labeled though as Pinot Blanc. And so that's a kind of fun thing. There's not a law or an entire guideline. It's up to the winemaker, the domaine, their terroir, what's expressive of what they're trying to put in the bottle. The vine age here is an average of 41 years. Now this family, this domaine, the domaine itself goes back to 1959, but the family is back to 1620. And I saw Olivier saying he was thirsty. I don't blame you. I'm thirsty too. I've got some allergies today, so I'm going to hold off on wine this morning. It's 11 a.m. local time, so I gotta hold off. I'll be drinking this bottle later with dinner. But so what I love about Pinot Blanc from Alsace, I'm constantly looking for amazing wines to pair with asparagus. This is one of the hardest wine pairings in the world. And for me, Pinot Blanc from Alsace is the quintessential pairing in the entire world with asparagus. And I was lucky to find some white asparagus in the last week or so here in the LA markets. And I actually opened a bottle of this with the white asparagus, and it was divine. So I highly recommend everybody out there get Zinumbrek Pinot Blanc with your asparagus during asparagus season. Moving on now to Pinot Gris. So Pinot Gris is respected as the most red-like of the white wines in Alsace. Meyer Fonet, another multi-generational winemaking family. They're on the third generation, currently established in the 18th century. And what's fun about Pinot Gris is this is something where you can get a little more opulence, a little bit more texture. And this wine itself, aged on the lees after a native ferment that went into 100-year-old foudre to allow a little additional oxygenation in the wine, and really brings out a nuttiness in this wine, which I love about it. Makes it very good to pair with white meats, pork. You could do it with duck. You could do it with sausages. It's really versatile. And this wine at 13.5% alcohol brings in 5.5 grams per liter of residual sugar, but also has just about 5 grams per liter of acid. So the wine is very balanced, given the fact that it does have a little bit of a residual sugar to it. But amazing granite with mica subsoil, calcareous marl, really making it expressive. And the average age here of the vines is 22 years. Now, Pinot Noir being the most famous of the Pinot varieties, let's be honest about that. As I said earlier, when you say Pinot, people don't even need the second part. This is from Domaine Ostertag. This is biodynamic farming since 1997. A lot of history with biodynamics. And they're in the town of Epfig. This is one of the most famous Ludi sites of all vineyards in the area, called the Franzholz Vineyard. And I'm a big fan of this wine. I personally worked with it in the past. And when you're talking about Pinot Noir from Burgundy, Pinot Noir from Oregon, Pinot Noir from Germany, Pinot Noir from Santa Barbara, all these places that are becoming eponymous with the Pinot Noir style we see in wine bars and restaurants around America, I dare you to find a higher quality Pinot Noir at $40 retail, you know, on a wine list, maybe $80, $85. It's becoming impossible to beat the delicacy, the intricate style of Alsace for a region with such warmth and sun. To be able to handle Pinot Noir so delicately and make wines of such elegance, it's really special. This was native ferment for 12 days on the skins. There was 20% whole cluster and still an elegance, still a delicacy. 1 year in used barrels. And again, for $40, how are you going to find a better opportunity for Pinot Noir at that price point right now? It's really, Pinot Noir has a place in the market that we all know, we all are aware of, and it's harder and harder to find high quality wines at that price. So it's really special. I love this with grilled chicken, any barbecue meats. You know, in LA, it's reaching up to about 100 degrees recently, 96 yesterday, probably 95 today. This with, you know, some sort of grilled chicken or maybe a grilled pork dish. This is absolute perfect pairing. And look, I highly recommend all y'all get outside the normal Burgundian Pinot Noir mentality, dive into Alsace and see they have the distinct influence of Germany, but this is something that we could showcase the distinct French influence as well. Really special wines.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks. What you must know is that there's a revolution, or a real evolution with the Pinot Noir in Alsace since, let's say, 20 years. Thanks maybe also because so some wine producers went to Burgundy to learn and so on, but all the wines, all the Pinot Noir have changed, as you mentioned, in Alsace. And now we have an amazing quality, good value for money if you want if you appreciate this great variety. Jenny, you know that you have to talk about the.
Oh, of course.
That's maybe the most difficult grape variety to pronounce. Gewurztraminer, even for French.
Yeah.
Even for a French guy to write it, it's tricky.
Perfect.
So,
yes, your pronunciation is levels beyond mine. But so I'm going to talk a little bit about Gewurztraminer, specifically the Albert Boxler Gewurztraminer Reserve 2016. So when we're thinking of Gewurztraminer in general, I often find that this is a variety to introduce to guests with food. I find a lot of success with particular pairings. I think that with spicy food, curries, Indian food, things like that, I find major success at the restaurants. And it's one of those kind of unsung, very cool pairing wines that I get really excited about when you have an excellent bottle. So we're thinking with the grape itself, they're intense wines. Aromatically, there's, you put your nose in the glass, it is intense. It's flying out of the glass with these incredible aromas of lychee and rose, more floral, some exotic spices. It's something that definitely has a personality. It's very showy. It wants you to know it's Gewurztraminer. So this particular bottle, this bottling is from Albert Boxler, whose family has been involved in Alsace since the late 1600s. And they run a small 13.5 hectare domain with his wife and parents, Jean Boxler, with his wife and parents, where they all live and work in the original house, which then, goes back to my obsession with the whole family thing here. I think it's fantastic. It's a cool story that you can kind of, even if you haven't been there, you can kind of paint this picture in your head, which creates a really beautiful story. So I appreciate that. With the artwork on the label created by his cousin, they have really cool labels. And somebody actually asked about the labels from the last one because I couldn't see them. So here's the Crémant. So with the Gewürz Reserve, which is what I'm speaking about. So this one is on 40 to 67-year-old, from 40 to 67-year-old vines. And this is mainly limestone soil. So what we talked about after tasting these wines initially was that this Gewürz is very structured, more mouth-watering. Generally, the acid level is not going to be really excessive in these wines, but there's a really beautiful balance. This one tends to a little bit more floral as opposed to the exotic spice, and is really a beautiful example of Gewürz from the region. It's half stainless steel, half foudre, and so you're not going to get any impact from oak in that way. You just get this really beautiful kind of texture and almost a roundness on the palate, which is awesome. Another producer that farms organically. So again, we're seeing the importance of the environment and sustainability and passing on from generation to generation, which I find of great import. Roasted meats, I always go back to Thai food and curries and spice. I just think that these wines knock that out of the park. So I think it's a really fun and exciting pairing for a lot of people who haven't been introduced to this variety from Alsace. So, Riesling, people always go to Riesling, but there's a lot of other really beautiful wines.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
you're right.
Which is it totally makes sense, but don't forget the other ones too. There's a time and a place for all of these varieties, and
right.
There's definitely one for this. So
just wanted to mention that on the Gewurztraminer you have 25 grams of residual sugar, and that's just quite a lot, but you don't taste them because you have, as you mentioned, Jenny, you have an amazing balance and some bitterness which creates the balance. That's very important, and that's why also for the curry, this one is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, I know that we are late. Sorry for that. Sorry, but thanks for being here once again, all of you. Just want to give my conclusion, even if Jenny gave a part of my conclusion already. It's okay, Jenny. Well, you mentioned the good value for money, and what I want to say is that Alsace, as it's written, Alsace checks all the trends boxes. I mean that at the present time, people want to drink, I wouldn't say great variety wines, but dry wines or balanced wines, freshness, aromatics, sparkling, elegant reds also, not too heavy, not too full-bodied. They don't want jam in the glass. That's exactly what you will find in Alsace: elegance, freshness, and so on. And we also respect the nature, biodiversity, people, and so on. Very respectful of everything, all the environments, because we just want to be sure that the kids and the kids of our kids will be still able to produce some wines in the future, and authentic, because we are in an authentic region with a strong identity
a good value for money also for all the wines. So, but you know, if you want to appreciate the Alsace wines, please come and visit us. It will be our pleasure. We will be absolutely pleased to welcome you. Do not hesitate. And if you want to, if you don't have enough time to visit us, please just open a bottle of Alsace wines. Never mind if it's a Gewurztraminer or Riesling and so on. And you will be in Alsace just by the wine. So thanks for your attention. Thank you so much. We have, I hope, we hope to see you in Alsace, yes. Just follow us on AlsaceRocks.com. And don't forget to drink Alsace, AlsaceRocks.com, VinsAlsace.com, and so on.